Very recently, the Lagos State government released a particular notice. It says, notification of the right of way of Lekki-Epe Expressway. Now, naturally, people are concerned. Right of way. Can you define what this actually means?
Is the entirety of what aids transportation. There's building line, there's fence line. So I could decide to extend my fence just to protect my frontage until the day the right of way comes. Then you now see everybody shifting back. It is not new. It's something that is already in the master plan. They're only trying to now activate those features.
It seems unfair to people who already have developed properties and then they are being told that this property is not supposed to be here. Some already have started undergoing demolition. No doubt about it, infrastructure will bring development, but there are casualties. Or is it just another kind of land grabbing?
If you are buying on the express, you are buying a commitment, and that commitment comes to a lot of risk. In all of this right of way, it is not like they would actually use everything. But you see that people say, I'm buying the express. And in buying the express, they don't do the due diligence. It's one thing to exchange money, to do a transaction, and that is to be sure that you are going to go well with it. You also need to check that, okay, how much of this land can I use
for the actual development?
For actual development.
For people, who are buying properties, particularly along the express, never take reference from what you see with your eyes, because that could be misleading, okay?
Yeah. So that's very important, because you see, when you're copying the next person, you don't know what the person is doing at the back end. So if your neighbor or 2 buildings away is shooting out, does not mean that they're also contravening, because the roads are not parallel. You could be looking at it with your eyes and say, oh, okay, it is straight. It is not straight.
And that can be the difference between a structure that is left standing and another that is demolished. Welcome once again to Square Meter Stories by the Detail Apartments. My name is Architect Akinde Olamido. Now, Square Meter Stories is actually a podcast built by Detail Apartments where ideas, topics and trends about real estate and property investments are discussed and simplified for your understanding. So real estate, as you know, is a proven strategy to build wealth and hedge against inflation. But it is not foolproof, meaning that you can make some mistakes. So the overall objective, as you know, of this podcast is to discuss all these ideas, bring subject matter experts, so that by highlighting these ideas, by explaining things that you do not know, you can actually work towards building your wealth through real estate and avoiding very, very costly mistakes. Our guest today is none other than Surveyor David Elegbede. He is returning for a second time, and we're very excited to have him. You're very welcome, Surveyor David.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the wonderful, very educative sessions. I followed through the other sessions, and it was very insightful.
We are super excited to have you. There's a lot to talk about. If you thought that we talked about a lot the last time, there's a whole lot to unpack this time around. But let me just read a very brief profile of Surveyor David just before we get right into it. He's the Director of Operations at Geosys Nigeria Limited, an excellence-driven geospatial enterprise that provides surveying support and consultancy services. He's a registered surveyor with the Surveyors Council of Nigeria, SOCON, and also a member of the Nigerian Institution of Surveyors. David has served both local and international committees in various capacities. He's currently the chair of the International Federation of Surveyors, FIG, Young Surveyors Africa Network. He is the lead of the in-country deployment team of the FIG Volunteer Community Surveyors Program, VCSP, and also a member of the FIG Climatic Compass Task Force and the FIG Mentoring Program for Africa. Once again, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
The last time you were here, we had so much to talk about surveys, demystifying surveys, helping people understand what surveys do, how important they are to real estate transactions, and how you can actually avoid certain mistakes when transacting in real estate as regards surveys. A lot to talk about, and we actually got very, very good feedback. Now, we want to dive into some other trending topics about real estate, and I just want to dive straight into it. Very recently, the Lagos State government released a particular notice. It was a publication, and I want to read here from my phone. It says, notification of the right of way of Lekki-Epe Expressway. As you know, there's been some very interesting development along the Lekki-Epe corridor. Yeah. They have expanded the roads. They did concrete roads, making transportation very, very seamless. It has opened up a lot of opportunities for real estate transactions and development. However, there are further plans by the government to improve on the infrastructure in this access. And so what they said by this communication was that the general public is hereby informed that the Lekki-Epe Expressway has a defined right-of-way of 94 meters reserved for critical infrastructure, including 3 lanes dual carriageway, pedestrian bridges, a green line rail track, drainages, and gas pipeline. We've already seen some semblance of what looks to be a pipeline being installed along the expressway. But then again, there is also a rail line coming here. And with regard to how much the road has been expanded, what they're saying is that there's still more work to be done. Now, naturally, people are concerned. Right of way. Can you define what this actually means?
Okay, yeah, it's a good start, and I think it's one of the major things now that, right of way is something that is not very common in that language on the streets. So we all say, okay, we go through roads and this. So the right of way itself is actually a complete entity of everything that has to aid transportations, whether it's going to be the bridge, whether it's going to be the pedestrian road. Okay, we are in the country where walkways are not really or bicycle lanes are not, but end to end is the entirety of what aids transportation. That's what the right of way means. And anywhere in the world, you don't obstruct the right of way, because ease of movement is what's one thing that is very, very important. I think that's what the government is trying to now implement. It is not new. It's something that is already in the master plan. They're only trying to now activate those features now, and that's why you see that in the notice they say that this has always been, or it's been there before, but public are informed not to obstruct or encroach on the right of way. So that's it, and you can see them. It's just that we don't pay attention to it. So you see that you're on the express, and you're seeing that the building lines are far away from the express. So there's building line, there's fence line. So I could decide to extend my fence just to protect my frontage, because I don't want anybody to just come, and start using the place for something else. But when you see my building line itself, you see that it's far inside. So I take advantage of the car park until the day the right of way comes. Then that's everybody shifting backwards. So the lines are drawn already, and it's not new. I don't think it might just be out of ignorance to run foul of that right of way policies.
So by way of educating, our many viewers here, and, so that those who are already in transactions or those who are about getting into transactions can be properly guided. Sometimes it seems, unfair to people who already have developed properties, and then they are being told that this property is not supposed to be here. The notice clearly says that those who have already have properties should, as a matter of urgency, desist or withdraw from those areas that are established right of ways. Now, you have several properties along this corridor that have already been marked. Some already have started undergoing demolition towards, I would say, Lekki-Epe or so. They have several areas where they have already marked them in preparation for this green line. No doubt about it, infrastructure would bring development, but there are casualties. These casualties, sometimes we'll say there's an undertone of maybe politics to it, or is it just another kind of land grabbing? What do you have to say to that?
Okay, like I did mention in my introduction speech, I said the right of way implementation is just like activating a feature of the master plan. It's not something new, and I'll give example. You see, one of the things you see people run foul of is doing due diligence to ensure that, okay, if you are buying on the express, you are buying a commitment, and that commitment comes to a lot of risk, and that's why I say that it's only the commercial guys that you want to see on those corridors, because one, it is not sufficient enough for you to have one plot of land on the express. They can depend on the kind of development you want to do. So when it's not just buying the land that matters now, it's ensuring that what you are buying, especially when on the express, does not fall within any part that has to do with the right of way. There are setbacks required. Number one, when you have the right of way, out of the right of way, there are setbacks you should have away from it, because in cases of any accident or disaster on the road, the train is going to come. Train derails. When they derail, because it's on full speed, it could go. So the essence is that, okay, you're able to shift. So in all of this right of way, it is not like they would actually use everything for the carriage.
So there's a buffer of some sort.
There will be some kind of buffer, like the coastal road is 100 meters, 90 meters, 100 meters. But it's not like everything is going to be in use. There are buffers that we don't want you to extend beyond this buffer. In case there are casualties, there are issues with mobilities, transportations that will have to derail or accidents. So you are off it. It doesn't affect you much. But you see that people say, I'm buying the express. And in buying the express, they don't do the due diligence. It's one thing to exchange money to do a transaction, and that is to be sure that you are going to go well with it. And that's why you see that out of those places that have been demolished, you hardly see people come out to say, oh, this is my document. You need to bring the document and say, if you actually go through the process, of course, it will show to you that, oh, this is how far you can go. For example, we had a client 2 weeks ago who was buying on the express, that's Lagos-Ikota Expressway. And because there was a demolition when they were doing the bridge, he had to check. So when we checked, we saw the line, and we had to investigate further to be sure. And we checked with physical planning also to say, okay, what is the corridor? What's it like on the corridor? I said, oh, I have seen it. And I'm like, oh, from this place, we're still safe. The guy still has 7 meters away from that line. And I told him, I said, you can, because you have a plot that is just about 500, okay, now you're extending about 600 square meters, and you want a complex. I said, if you are talking with a very honest town planner who's going to help you with your approvals, you'll be able to advise you further. Because in all of this, right, in all of this ownership, you see people use car park. Towards this elevation church,
yes,
you see car park. You see that the development itself is far.
It's further away from the road.
So you can have those used for temporary use, but not permanent. So that when the development comes, you just shift. So don't get carried away by the electric poles that you are seeing, because electric poles, they don't take anything. They will move the electric poles to where they're supposed to be. Where the expansions are actually supposed to come. So it's like you project into the future,
yes,
to be able to accommodate the volume of people that you have. And you know, Lagos is about one of the most populated cities, and the pressure is much. That is why you see some of this opening. So if you actually want to ease the traffic, especially on this corridor, where you don't have alternative routes to come out, you need to open up the road, give people a means of other means of transportation, so that everybody don't have to ride on the road. These are measures that developers are now imbibing, and this is one of the reasons why this is now being activated. So in doing due diligence, if you are buying, you need to be sure what they are selling to you. You also need to check that, okay, how much of this land can I use
for the actual development?
For actual development. You see, the guys who would always be safe, like I had mentioned in one of the places I've been asked this question, are the guys with the filling stations. The fueling stations will be safe, because before you have a right to own a fuel station, you go through the DPR, they check you, you can't do with one plot where you want to be mining land. You do with the 2 plots. So you see that it's only the diesel pump, maybe just one pump, that is outside. So when they want to shift, they'll just move their diesel pump and shift it somewhere else. The main tank and everything are not being affected.
And they may even have made provisions for an alternate kind of maybe position for that pump.
Of course.
But just for visibility's sake, they may now situate it closer to them, so people can see that, oh, actually you can.
Yeah, so you see that happen. But when you look at the other corridors, you look at from Lekki phase 1, you see a fence has already been erected. You know, the 94 meters is actually from the center of the road. So you are looking at the center.
So is it both ways from center of the road?
Yes,
like the entire alignment is 94.
So when you check the alignment, maybe you should check again now.
Okay.
So I need to be sure now. I can't remember, but I know that when you talk about setback, we always measure from the center of the road.
Okay.
So when you measure from the center of the road, the entirety of this is supposed to be the right of way, inclusive of the setback.
Okay, I see. So for people, you know, who are buying properties, particularly along the express, those who are commercially inclined, what you're saying is that never take reference from what you see with your eyes.
Of course.
You know, because that could be misleading. And you know, the way a lot of people get it wrong is they are looking at what they see and they say, for this person to have done this, then it must mean that I can do it. And then that person does. So that same kind of contravention just travels. It carries on like that. And then it now seems like the new normal. So for somebody now coming into the area saying, I want to develop, he's being misled by what he has already seen and now falls into the trap. What you're saying in essence is that get your for example, a surveyor should come first and foremost, determine that, and then you're able to help him establish what exactly, of course, in consulting with the relevant agencies, such as the physical planning permit authorities, what exactly is the safe place from which I can develop?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's very important, because you see, when you're copying the next person, you don't know what the person is doing in the back end, and when everything's scattered, you are going to be at the losing end. But when you have captured your geospatial information, that can be related to any of the offices. Physical planners will check.
It's called planning information.
They have the physical planning, have the master plan. They will look at it and tell you, oh, okay, this is what you can do. Well, then the use also comes in, you know. So you say, okay, is this somewhere you are supposed to do what you are doing, so that when the demolition comes, you see some persons will not just react.
Yes,
they'll just
because they know
have an issue that oh, okay, yes, of course, yes, let's just go. But yes, you can make use temporarily. You can make use of the front of your property for we tell you to do temporary things there. You see gender. So you look at gender style.
That's another thing.
You see the GT Bank guys. So they might not own the land to the drainage. To
that point.
Yeah, but when things come, they can shift back a bit and be able to accommodate the change. So people should learn to get information and also be sure. Because sometimes, you know, the guy selling, if you're buying from Manila, sometimes they sell to the edge of the drainage to you and tell you that this is the land. Then by the time you go to check, you see that you need to leave 4 meters, 5 meters. And people make mistakes. So if your neighbor or 2 buildings away is shooting out, does not mean that they're also contravening, because the roads are not parallel. You could be looking at it with your eyes and say, oh, okay, it is straight. It is not straight. You could have a kind of parabola. You could have a kind of curve. So when you take a buffer from that curve, it could also save the next compound from running a foul.
Let me jump in here. In the last episode, you made reference to how you should never, with just face value, estimate and say, I can do this because I say this. You mentioned something just now, which I want us to kind of unpack. The fact that you see a particular building in a particular line doesn't mean that you, with your own eyes now, as a layman, say, okay, I'm tracing it, and so for this reason, on this particular line, I can do this. You know, because by the time you actually check the master plan itself, the road that you're talking about, or the portion on which that particular place falls, may be determined by another path that is not physically evident from what you're saying.
Of course, yes. Because you see, that's one of the importance of surveying deliverables. So once you have the XYZ, and you have a surveyor who have picked the information for you, any other agency can relate. We need to see it. How is it sitting on the rail? Not by eyes, because even myself, as experienced as I am, I can't judge things by the eyes.
You rely on your tools.
I rely on my tools. I rely on my tools, otherwise I'm going to cause a trouble.
They mislead you.
So of course, so you need to put it and see. Because if there's a curve by my side and I'm thinking that, oh, it's straight, we are together, then it becomes a trouble.
And that can be the difference between a structure that is left standing and another that is demolished.
Of course.
It may appear unfair. They say, okay, this building should have been demolished, but that building may actually be sitting in the right place. Whereas just next door, that other building may be affected and may be brought down.
Exactly. So we need to look at things holistically, not with not by word of mouth. You need to pick your information. Say, work with data. The white guys will tell you we work with data, and that's why they are improving. So we need to, the XYZ needs to be determined. So you can put it and have a sense of what, because when they want to demolish, it is from this XYZ. They won't come to the ground and start saying, okay, is this one. It is from the data, from the XYZ that they take to say, okay, mark here. You are 1 meters away, you are 2 meters away, you are 3 meters away. It's determined by the XYZ.
Just makes me remember a very funny quote. So somebody says, you know, in God we trust, all other persons should bring data.
Of course, yeah.
All right. Exactly. You know, infrastructure is going to still come to this Lekki-Epe corridor, and regardless of the kind of sentiments that may be expressed, people may not be happy about it, and unfortunately, you know, some people's investments would be truncated. It's very, very sadly. But this green line is here to stay, and people need to know, you know, particularly for those who are transacting, those who still have some transactions to do, and even those who have even invested, ways to mitigate, because you may have invested, bought property. Before you put anything on that land, you can still salvage your whatever it is that is left to accommodate whatever developments may be planned. Not just going ahead to say, if they see a structure on the land, then maybe they will spare my land. That doesn't happen again in Lagos, it does it.
Yeah.
Let's now talk about another thing regarding this. There are enforcement exercises. One is even going on right now along, I don't know if you've been watching the news, the Ikota River alignment.
Okay, yeah.
Not so far from us here.
I saw
right?
the commissioner.
The commissioner, for environment, Honorable Tokumbo Wahab, right? And he has been going around saying things that were built along these alignments that constitute a public nuisance will be brought down. And of course, there's a lot of uproar and there's a lot of, backlash and things like that, but for the sake, of, the public good, those houses, they still have to come down. Very, very, very sad. For those who are saying this is an undertone of Lagos State trying to grab land, in this case, there's no land per se. It's a river we're talking about. So what do you have to say about that? And, as from a surveying perspective, how could people have avoided this in the first place?
Okay, so let me comment from the last conversation we just dropped. You see, I think we need to also try to educate the public about what the law says.
Right.
So there's something that is called the social infrastructure.
Okay.
These are infrastructures that are actually for the public use. These are infrastructures that would benefit the public more. So it is public. It is all inclusive, whether the poor or the rich. So it's social infrastructure. So now these things, even if by the virtue of the Land Use Act, even if the government needs to take a bit more to be able to accommodate these social infrastructures, a compensation would have to be given to the people that will be affected. That's the people that, in the long run, they are not encroaching. But because of the design, government needs to put in some other basic touch, like when the master plan was done.
Yes.
Technology was not this vast.
Yes.
So if the technology says that, the train has to take, and the train takes about 3 meters of the right of way. Correct. So if they say, because of the technology, we need to, or the kind of train, we need to take a bit more, compensations will have to come in for these individuals and the quantum of what is being taken. So I think we need to include that. So now come to your question about the demolition. I keep saying it that sometimes when people cry foul of demolition, I always say, if you have a documentation, please let us see. Let's see if the government is not fair, because you can't block the path to the water, especially in this Lagos that we have, where flooding is it's a big issue, very alarming. Yes, so you see, one thing, people are not being honest with themselves, so they just jump in, buy. And sometimes, when you're even trying to talk to a professional, to even pay for the professional fee is another serious matter. Yeah. So you just see someone talking to a professional trader, or I call them traders, and all they want is they just want a sharp result. And in the long run, they run foul. You can't go back to the people. You can't compromise your way. The way Lagos State structure is being done, yes, you see that there are cases where you need to also confirm with drainage and services. It is always important. These are things that you need to check, especially on these parts. There are rules that Lagos State put in. If you want to build, they say before you can get approvals, especially on the island, you do a topographical survey. They want to see the flow. They want to have an understanding of how to drain, how to drain and everything. Yeah. But it's that people don't do it. No, some people don't even. You are not even sure if the government guys are even checking the topographical surveys. But you see that a few persons want to align with it. Yes. They want to make sure that things work well. Those people pay more. Yes. But they are seen as full. But the guy who wants to just maximize profit would want to always find a shortcut, and that is what is happening now. You see people who don't have approvals. I don't think that, I still stand to be corrected, that anybody who is sitting on that part has an approval that is genuine.
I don't think they even have the approvals, because the commission was very forthright in asking, if you have your papers, present them. It's as simple as that.
So you see now.
And let me just jump in. Why I would say, for those who are viewing this, why they need to take caution, when buying properties, that sometimes the property actually looks very fine. And if you look at the videos, and I've seen quite a number of them along that Ikota River alignment, the properties actually look very, very okay. I mean, and the developers who may have done this, they do very, very nice, what's it called, retaining walls, embankments, kind of like to protect the property, from actually eroding into the river itself. But they have encroached into the river. So somebody comes, sees a very lovely property, negotiates with the developer, buys off the property. Then say, fast forward a year or two later, the person now sees a big X.
Yeah.
And then you now see what? ROW, right of way.
Yeah.
Or you see ODS, which is the Office of Drainage Services. And then, one thing I want to highlight here, for our viewers is that there's actually something called drainage clearance.
Of course.
And the drainage clearance, you obtain that with the Ministry of Environment, but it's not something that is maybe talked about, or maybe sensitization is very, very, very poor. And people need to know this, particularly if you suspect that your development, your property may be near a river. Again, another thing I want to point out again from what I saw in those videos is that over a long period of time, because a lot of people have encroached, it now becomes normal that, there was never anything here before.
Yeah.
Particularly if there was a river, there was a canal, people have sandfilled it. And tell you what, I don't know if it's the government that has to do more work, in carrying out enforcement. But last year, when this whole issue happened, where the commissioner was still moving around this axis, he actually got to Ikota and said, some people are sandfilling here. Caution them, and all of that. And you will think that people will take heed. Yeah. But when he returned a year later, the place had even developed more.
They built already.
They built, built already. There's even one particular plot I saw, development was ongoing, and it was very clear from an aerial, view that this particular sand filling reclamation was very, very, very fresh. So in the minds of people, it is, if people are already building here, why did you allow them build? But those houses don't have any approvals.
Well, let me quickly answer. You see, we're in Lagos now, and Lagos has invested in a lot of technology. So I can tell you categorically that Lagos is properly mapped, and they have the image of the whole of Lagos. So they see what is going on.
They also fly drones, I believe.
They fly a drone. I think last year they had another update that is being used.
Right.
Yeah. So they know, they see what is actually going on, so they plan with it.
Okay.
Well, again, you see, I would also fault do I fault the government? Because, in Lagos now, if you change the paint of your fence, you see a mark because you didn't get a permit for it. That's how serious Lagos development issues are. Planning, the planning office is working. But you see that they keep coming. From the day you fence, they keep coming to mark you down. Stop work. The day you do something else, they come to tell you to stop work. You see that people they clean it up.
So, and maybe they settle someone.
And they settle, and they try to also settle. You see, people try to play smart. You hear developers will tell you that, when you have a half lot and he wants to build Aso Rock on it, to tell you, can you blow the survey for me? Just to deceive. You don't say. People do that. Yeah, so you now throw the small building into the big unrealistic and they just pass through the back, and sometimes you wonder how they get.
They blow up surveys.
So you want to blow up. So they
to make the building appear like it can fit.
Exactly. Yeah. So the setbacks does not really matter because they just look at it.
But who is asking for it? I'm really sorry. Is it the owner of the property asking for this?
You see, developers sometimes would always want to ask for it. Just be able to beat the system.
And then now sell to unsuspecting people.
Of course. So you have two sets of drawings, the realistic and the one that you are using to run your back end kind of runs. And you can't eat your cake and have it. That's just the truth.
Definitely.
So the guys who are coming to check would always come to check.
Yeah.
If you like, pay them from today to tomorrow. Whatever you are giving them, you're only buying the day of death. You cannot run away from it. So these guys will just look at you, and because they will not enforce for demolition, they will enforce that you should stop work. So the work that should stop. But they cannot enforce for demolition. They know that one day the trumpet will sound,
higher authority will come,
and now everybody will now start asking for, where did you get it? They know what has happened. It's the guys who now buy. that should ask questions, because you should do feasibility studies. See, there's something they say.
Yeah.
The government also used to request for environmental impact analysis,
Yes.
which most people don't do.
Yeah.
You understand? You want to wait for a big project before you can conclude. But I've seen a lot of projects.
Yeah.
A lot of projects ask for, let's do environmental impact analysis. Let's have an understanding of what is happening.
Yeah.
They move to almost 2 kilometers away from the area to have a knowledge of what is going on. You understand? But you see, people don't want to do that, and you know, because it's costly. People really want to, but these are things that we should put into consideration.
But let me also say something. It's not costly. If people kind of can look at it as an investment, you know, because every time we say cost, you know, the things that actually would save you heartache would cost you a little bit. But if you look at it from the angle of this is an investment that kind of guarantees the safety of my investment.
Yeah.
It guarantees, it gives me assurance, it gives me peace of mind. You know, I may not have needed to spend it and still get away with it. But for the fact that it bears a risk for you losing that investment, some or all of it, then if you see it as an investment, it should not be a difficult decision for you to make. Because
of course,
if you see what, and I'm hoping that we can share some videos, you know, in this podcast so that people can actually see what we're trying to talk to here as to the effect of the encroachment and the possible actions Lagos State is going to carry out in Ikota. There are about 18 buildings that are said to have been marked for demolition. 18 times the average cost of a house there in Ikota is about maybe 150, 200 million. Now multiply that by 18, you're looking at about a 3 billion properties.
Kind of investment is not what it's.
It is a very sad thing. Very sad thing. So that's about that. Now, let's now talk about, you know, very recently, the amnesty period for issuance of approvals, you know, actually elapsed. And not many people took advantage of that. And, you know, the thing about properties, for those who want to buy, I think it's a safe thing to advise them to ask if the property has any approvals before they buy. Because if the property has any approvals, it's not about how nice a building looks or the fact that it is too good that you can steer public sentiments to avert whatever demolition or public action that will be taken. You have to ask for your approvals. Now, for those who are caught outside the web, those who have not been able to still get the approvals, what as a professional would you advise them to do?
Okay, let's look at holistically the purpose of, because when people know the purpose, it makes it much easy. You see, in any developed countries, you know what is where at every particular time. And I think that's one thing Lagos is also trying to imbibe.
Okay.
So when you look at what's the benefit of the amnesty itself to the public, well, you know, there was a discussion on a particular class when we were looking at it, and you know, the submission was that what's the advantage? The only thing is that you have built, but you do not have approval, so you're not paying a penalty. It doesn't stop you from paying the amount you're supposed to pay to be candid. And when you look at the common man who has struggled to build in somewhere like Ayobo, struggled to buy the land, contribute some money to build, and looks at the cost of some of these things. We're not trying to justify it. I'm also trying to say that I think we need to look at the realistic part of some of these policies in terms of the cost from the government side, that it becomes a little bit friendly for people to be able, that's all inclusive for all. So the amnesty program is what I would term an integration kind of approach, and I think it will still have to open up again to be able to allow people, because, how do you want to do it? The first plot has done, the second plot did, the third plot did not do, the fourth plot did, the fifth did not do, the sixth did not do, the seventh did. So you just come and carry their house like cabin and just take it away. You know that when you look at it from the real sense, it might not be possible. I think that policy have been able to push people to be able to have a record with the government. The idea also is you're able to have a count. So this is, I see it from a point of the government trying to understand what is existing around and what exactly are we looking at. So they have in the study, though I don't understand the spatial and digital aspect of this thing, but I think that it's a good way of gathering information for the government to be able to know what is existing. So in some countries it's used for tax, It's used for budget planning. It's used to take informed decisions.
Correct.
So we look at it from that angle. It's actually very good for policy making.
Yes.
But when you look at it from the other side of the public, of the common man, I've seen a lot of the assessment after it came out, and you're looking at an assessment of 700,000 naira for a man who has not been able to even fix a window for himself in the house. He will tell you that if I have that 700, let me quickly fix a window. When government come, we'll talk about it. So I think government will also need to look at it, but it's a very good one. It's an integration for people to be able to buy into it. But again, you ask yourself, what about people who have contravened those kind of setbacks that we've talked about? So you're still bringing them on board. You're trying to just accommodate them with their issues based on their problems. Well, it's a good approach, and I think a lot of people actually bought into it, and maybe appeal to the government to open it up again. The government actually made revenue was actually one of the
so it was one of it.
So they actually made the money also, but let's look at the importance of it, which is some of the things that I outlined. You want to look at it from another view of data gathering, trying to make informed decisions, knowing what is where. Okay, we have an extension to this place. What kind of things are here? On the day that this airport begins to run, you have a clear understanding that, okay, these are the kind of buildings that are here. This is how far the paths can be. These are data is very important for planning. I think is a kudos to the government for allowing it. And okay, if you are not paying penalty fee, at least now you will pay the other fee, because penalty fee too can be crazy sometimes.
It's actually times 4 of whatever it is that
so I think it's a nice adjustment. Maybe something also can be done to keep encouraging people to be able to buy into it, but it's very important.
One thing I wanted to mention, I think one of the benefits of the Lagos State's bringing up this initiative was to actually help people also unlock the capital that they have. Because without registration, without any kind of documentation, that asset is dead. Yeah. You can't use it, you can't borrow with it, you can't borrow against it, you can't take up any kind of facility.
And quickly, a few people now had to do their survey because they never had one. So
it forces you to get your documentation right.
Exactly.
And then in the event, you see how this thing actually comes back to save people's investment. In the event that in the future the government has to, for example, establish some sort of infrastructure or take a particular or expand the right of way, you who has actually fallen on the good side of the law can actually qualify to actually claim compensation.
Of course.
Because without documentation, you are
not covered. You're not protected. So your tenure right is gone. So that's it. But I hope people will take advantage of this kind of opportunity.
Like I said, it's a call that the government hits. It's the request or to extend the benefits of what a lot of people have been able to take advantage of, initiating it and ensuring that a lot more people are brought into the net, and then they are able to unlock the advantages of doing so.
Yes.
So the next thing I want us to talk about is the situation around the Ekpe. Okay, for a long time before now, Ekpe was a remote location. I mean, people didn't used to go there. Probably because the roads weren't so very good. I recollect when I was still in school, I schooled in Federal University of Technology, Akure. And so from Lagos, I would want to cut out the commute through Bega, Ibadan. I mean, I'll just take Ijebu-Ode and the next thing, I'm on the Ikota Expressway. And so it was a very difficult route to take to school back in the day. But now that the roads have been done, it's so easy to get to Ekpe just like that. And Ekpe has opened up. And a lot of people have taken position. However, there has been some casualty in recent times where people have encroached into other lands that they shouldn't have encroached into. People have bought committed lands. People have all sorts of things, right? And then now the government had to step in to say, you know what, there's a way we have to fix this madness. And a few things were done, which, from my research, it says all land allocation in Ekpe must now go through the NTDA, that's the New Town Development Authority. It says that regularization of titles via the Lagos State Lands Bureau and the Office of the Surveyor General are no longer permitted. It also says that registered survey for Ekpe properties can no longer be lodged at the Office of the Surveyor General. In essence, it appears like there's a lot of shake-up in that axis. What is actually playing out in
Okay, so let me explain some things. I think in 3 things you have just mentioned, I think some of them are not in clear terms of actually what is going on.
All right.
So I think it's just the government trying to avoid what is happening in Ibeju. So I think Ibeju is also undergoing some kind of remodeling now to see how they can integrate some persons. A lot of persons are already encroached into proposed development for that area.
Right.
But for Epe, so you talked about why Epe was not very developed and in the past and everything. So Epe was actually zoned for agricultural purpose. So where during the military era, every state was supposed to have a place where food for the nation and the like. So Epe, you see Imota, Ikorodu, like that. You see them that when you check, you see more of agric use. So I think that was supposed to be like a food hub for the state. Yes. However, while Ibeju was opening up, there's a way it keeps encroaching into one another. So from Ibeju, you enter Epe. So the real estate business went into it.
It caught fire.
And it is actually not because that was what was supposed to happen. It was because there was an information that the airport was coming and some infrastructures were coming to the place. So people went ahead, start talking to the Moniles. Why would you respect customary land? And I think government has a little room for customary land also. That's why you see excisions and everything being given. You see there's a limit to some of these things. And a lot of things have already happened. Estate have already patched into different locations in Epe. And now, in order to be able to manage the situation, so what they did was they kind of do a kind of map compilation.
Okay.
So they try to see what is where at that material time onto their system. Okay. See what is left. Now see what can we accommodate. So what will happen now is that in some areas, some persons will have to go to NTDA to be accommodated through regularization process. So some estates will have to go through
NTDA now.
NTDA for regularization clearance and regularization process to be brought into the process.
Yes.
I might not be able to talk about the integrity of the process, but that is actually what's been said. I think early this year there was a kind of, is it this year or last year, there was a kind of a town hall meeting with stakeholders around where
was it last year, I think.
Yeah, so where they went to try to sensitize them, to let them know. I think maybe the sensitization should have come earlier before this whole commitment. But again, you see, the thing they decided to do, and of course, which the Surveyor General also have explained to surveying practitioners in Lagos, was that because the use was going to change, so they felt in order not to wrongly inform the public, because if you lodge, I am expecting that you tell me the status. The certificate of deposits talked about the status of the land.
Right.
So that's a commitment on the part of the Office of the Surveyor General. So in order not to give that conflicting information pending when there's an agreement, because this is not just about NTDA and Agric are working together on this purpose, for this purpose. So until when that thing is finalized, so they want to be sure. That is why the issue of survey is being altered for now. So that's it. So when it's opened up, I think it will go back to the norms. Regularization will come, because it's not the entire land that is controlled by NTD. Right. So there are some lands that are totally free, that has no business. But of course, places where real estate have already mashed into, I think NTD is trying to bring it on board, because that is their part of their duties. It's New Town Development Authority. You are coming up as a new town, but we have to come into it and see what you are doing and bring you on board. So it's a way of planning to ensure that it is well planned, not just a choke of people just where it's supposed to be residential mix, when we say it's supposed to be commercial. So it's a way of managing the whole community. So that's what it's playing out.
Okay. I want to talk about
and sorry to add, then the allocation will now come. Allocation comes with NTDA giving you a clearance and ascertaining that you're going to get it. Then you go to allocation. From lands will give you your allocation document. So these are processes that you are you're getting a right from government directly on the land that is meant for government, actually. The ones that go for regularization, there's also a process for it. So that's it. I think they should have concluded, because it's taking a long time now. It's almost a year or a year plus. So they should conclude. I don't know why it's been delayed, but that is actually the genius. But integrity of it, we leave it to them.
Okay. So, part of the reasons I think why this was very necessary was to kind of stop the very many unscrupulous activities of speculators, of community leaders or moneyless transacting multiple times on a piece of land. I think was also to kind of bring a halt to the madness that was going on. No, there.
You see, the one about transacting on the same piece of land,
yes,
that one would remain till Jesus come. But the one about extending beyond your boundary,
yes,
that will resolve it, because you see that moneyless are being given excision.
Yes.
So community has an excision. But in most cases, they sell. I've been to places where, when you look at behind, maybe don't let me call names now, so I don't put fear into people. So you see, I've been to places where you are looking at the excision on the map. You have picked your coordinates.
Yes.
And you are saying that they are telling the client that the client has an excision, but it's just behind the excision. Especially just behind the excision. So you are looking at this is somebody's building. So I'm next by the person's building now, and the place is covered. But no, that's not, map is not four corner. Map is a regular shape. So you are out of the coverage.
Yes.
So people don't know some of this. So you see that with this purpose now, everybody's able to know where they belong to. So when Omola is telling you that we have, I used to smile, it's many in Ekpe, you see we have 200 acres. And from my knowledge of even excision that is being issued, when you look at the bedroom and the excisions that have been given, you see that the whole community is even having less than 200 acres.
Yes.
When you're not talking about one person, one family owning about 200 acres, then we need to investigate. So sometimes I say I don't understand. I don't think something is not correct. And when you check, you see that it's not really true. They don't really own they might own a part of it, but it's not as much as they claim. And they just keep pointing to you, like how they used to measure in the past. In the Egyptian, they say they throw stone. That's how measurement started. They just keep pointing to you. It goes like this. But sometimes it has a stop.
But you actually did say in the last podcast while you were here, that excision really there isn't really anything like excision anymore. I mean, it's not allocation, right?
No, there's excision. Okay, they still give excision. So allocation comes in the part where you say this land is for, if detail apartment wants to acquire land and is within the government preview, so you go for allocation.
Yes.
So you are buying from the government. Government will give you the land.
Yes.
So that's when allocation comes in.
Right.
So people still file in for, because when you get excision, you now get the official publication, which is the
But people still file for excision now?
I think people do more of allocation now.
Yes.
Because now they've exhausted the excision. So there's still some excision in process has been out. So I think it's stylishly been replaced by saying you are getting an allocation. But it's quite very expensive too.
Yes. So right now, what would you advise investors? Because some people are still marketing Ekpe lands. I don't know how safe that is at the moment. What things you think people should do if they are looking at taking positions in buying properties in Ekpe? What would you advise?
The funny part of it is that even to check is a little bit very not clear. But I would say that if anybody wants to acquire land, they engage the surveyor. I think surveyors will always have their way. Then you can have a discussion with NTDA to even have a pre-knowledge of what they are planning. So that way, you are able to maximize errors or any kind of
minimize errors.
Minimize errors and maximize every opportunities that you have. At least you have beforehand information that this is what they have. They try to do there, so you are able to take a caution. So you can still get preliminary information. It's not like the information is total. It might not be official yet, but you can have preliminary information to say, oh, this is going to, like Food Up. People knew Food Up. Food Up was going to come here. So some people went to take their tents. Some people went in to do deep investigation to be sure that where is the extent of this food hub? Yes, you can actually have those kind of pre-information to help your plan, because sometimes if you are a business person and you have your business way, you would get information that you need and be able to plan ahead. So those information are there. They might not be very open to the public for now because they are not official, but you can always get a first-hand information.
I want, for the sake of some people who will be listening right now, you know, those people who may have bought agric land, agric land, and I want us to be very factual. I'm not trying to put fears in the minds of people, you know, but how can they, what are the things that they should expect, right? And for those who may actually be marketed to as saying, we have this particular land, it's agric land, but don't worry, you'll be able to convert it or change the use. What would be your advice to them? How carefully should they tread?
So I think use changing is not, I think when I talk to my friends in the town planners, they kind of frown away from that use changing unless there is a remodeling. Use changing is not something that is very, in fact in Ogun State they will tell you that there's nothing like use changing for us.
Yes.
But you see, the thing there is this: we if you have bought a land and it's agric purpose, and you have already built, the question is, how do you even start? So those kind of people, you know that their documentation are not very certain. You understand? So yes, they've run foul of.
They've contravened one way or the other.
Contravened, yeah. But there could be a form of being accommodated in a way of saying, okay, because maybe of that development that we have here, they should come for regularization. So some people will be having those kind of consideration. Why some persons will not have. Some persons will have to leave. You can't take that away. So they might not be able to accommodate everybody. But of course, there are two things. Is that it is being demolished or you are being called for regularization. Yes. So some, you know, real estate guys are big guys, and they have a very strong mind. So some of them always know, and they're always waiting to say, okay, when the time comes, we would always come to the table. And
but that kind of hope is never a good strategy.
It's a risk. It's a very huge risk. Especially for the guys who are going to invest their funds. You are not giving them a rest of mind. So if it's agric and it's not even used for agric, it's number one, you've contravened. Then if you are now within and you are living there, it's a very huge risk. You cannot be sure of what the government would.
Because the government can wake up one day and say, you know what, we are going to put the land to use in this particular manner.
If you have a very strict government who is looking at a long-time benefit for the state than individual benefits, it will go. And you are not, except it's just trying to be human to say, let's just give them a what for their land, or maybe not even a what, maybe for the building, because you don't even own the land in the first place. Maybe for your building. You know, you see people, government will tell you, you can build on the government land. When government comes, government owns the land. You can carry your building away from it. That's it. You own the building. That's
the language.
But you don't own it. So if you have your way, you can just lift your building away from it and go. It's your own. So government will not. So that's why you see that when they want to demolish, they give you a notice. And say, hopefully, if you can, whether the building can be lifted on something, you can just carry the building away and go.
You know, it brings me back to what we're trying to do, you know, with this podcast is to enlighten people, you know, because most times you shouldn't try to go at this yourself or say, because I saw somebody else do it. Always engage a professional. See it as an investment.
Of course.
Just see that, and it may end up by you, and you may not have to like what the professional will tell you. The professional may tell you, do not do it. You may have spent that money, quite all right, to engage, like for example, somebody engages you, and you tell the person, this is a bad move, don't do it. You've collected the money, but you know what? You have saved that person the heartache, or that kind of debt trap that is happening way in the future, which the person may not see today.
Yes, and you know, sometimes we talk to some persons, and when you talk to them, be like, I've sent you the first one, the second one, the third one, and you're saying, no way, no way, no way. Like, but people are doing it now. Say, well, if you want to take the risk, but I cannot assure you, let it be on the note that I've advised you.
And so that kind of burden, you know, which I would say it's professionally, ethically, you know, it's what you're obligated to do, to tell the person, this is it here. Of course. Then if you have provided all that information and you still feel led to take the risk, hey,
it's you and your money.
All right, let's now look forward, right? Because with technology, I mean, we talked about how what are the things Lagos State can do to drive compliance, to ensure that people don't actually travel so far in expending so much money,
Yeah.
and then to later lose it, or how the Lagos State can actually protect investors who are ignorant in some cases, who are very innocent in some other cases, of losing their investments, having trusted developers to have done the right thing, having trusted professionals in quote to have done the right thing. So the role of technology, drones, GIS, USG platforms, how do you think in this line, if properly applied, can help manage each of these issues that we've talked about and then save the investor at the end of the day?
Okay, there's a sellable idea that I have seen even when I interact with my colleagues from outside. When I also travel outside, I see those things because most of my travels are surveying-based purpose.
Yes.
And the truth is, I think Lagos is almost there. But we have bureaucracies, we have bottleneck issues, which has to do with implementation.
There's some people benefiting from the current
civil
system.
servant kind of behaviors and everything. For example, like I mentioned earlier, Lagos State is well mapped. They have the orthophoto of Lagos. Sometimes when you are applying for title and you have an issue, sometimes you see them tell you that your this does not agree with the orthophoto. So what is orthophoto? Orthophoto is a drone image.
Okay.
So they put it on it, they're seeing the building and they're saying that your survey is not sitting appropriately.
Oh, well, that happened to me one time, and it's very interesting that Lagos State has gone that detailed in applying or telling you whether or not a particular survey generated actually matches with this orthophoto.
Yeah.
So there is particular property that a survey was done for. We're trying to do the perfection of the document.
Yeah.
So a survey was sent in, and then the comment was that the survey actually is not properly aligned.
Yes.
You know what? The surveyor had to do that survey all over again, and then they now put it back into the system before they accepted it.
Yeah,
so
you have to do withdrawal and resubmission. So that orthophoto helps them now to be able to take informed information without having to waste.
So when did that actually come into existence? When did they start this particular initiative?
If I remember very well, I think there was a first mapping project. I think they used to mention 2009. They used to mention 2015 during Ambode also. So that's what gave birth to what we call the vector 4 parameter mapping that we are now using. Then moving forward now, they now have a proper orthophoto, which helps them to see what is where at that material time. However, you see, beyond that also, I think last year the governor actually also launched the Lagos GIS, which was supposed to streamline the process of title processing.
Right.
So from the comfort of your office or house, you could just take in your documents, submit them online, make your payments and everything. The workability is the problem now. I don't think that thing has really functioned as it's supposed to be.
Right.
You still need a middle person to be able to proceed with what you are doing, which is still part of the implementation issues we are talking about. Because one thing technology helps you to do is that it helps you to bridge that corruption part, that's bureaucracies, that's that you have to pay someone to do something. So you are interacting directly, and it's on the basis of first come, first serve.
Correct.
But hey, that has not been able to work. But the Lagos GIS is actually on, and I think it's active also. You see, when you want to do all of these things, like we've mentioned in the last episode, you should have your charting information to help you have an understanding. If you have a survey also and you're not very sure, you should do a land information. You just need a copy of the survey.
Correct.
And sometimes people don't want to release the copy to you because by the time the copy comes back, it comes back with a lot of tribal mark, which is stamps and everything. So it's not useful for any other thing again. But if you want to buy, it's important you at least do your charting information to have an idea. If the place is said to be safe and the survey is faulty, you can still adjust.
Right.
You still have rest of mind. Okay, you just call your surveyor to come
just
and do your own, again, but now you know you are safe. Your building approvals also can be checked. Titles can be checked with the office of the Ministry of Lands to see if that thing was actually in, because there are also fake COs.
Of course. We had a lawyer come on one episode and told us that for a particular property there was no survey on the property and it is lodged. Somewhere. So there are so many funny shady practices happening.
So they know when you put in, you get this the true story of what is going on. So those things are there. So technology has really helped many developed countries. It's funny to say that in Netherlands, everything is, they don't even have some of these bureaucracies. So everything is on a single system. They don't even have professional bodies. So yeah, they only have people who work in the system.
Okay.
So all cadastral property surveys is done by them. So they know who owns what. And that helps them because they also, if you have a rule where you say public office holders are to declare and you don't declare enough, they know in their system that you own 4-5.
What belongs to who?
You understand? So that helps the taxing policies also. So you know what tax is saying, what tax is expected from this person. You know who owns this thing, and you are not having a third person coming to do something and it's not aligned. Because if you come in for your survey, I might not be able to sit exactly the way the previous surveyor has done it. So little by little, we are introducing a little shift. Gradually introducing a little shift, but they just lift from what the information they have because they've mapped and they just integrate. So they have an integrated system. I've seen the director of Cadastre International in the Netherlands present at the UN conference meeting in Mexico, which I was also part of. And you want to see their model. So they try to incorporate those digital platforms to improve their deliverables to the public. I think Lagos has already have these things. I think it's just the issue of implementation and the money made from the back end.
Exactly.
So that's the issues. Otherwise, those systems are here in Lagos. And that is why it's easy to pick people that contravene.
All right. Hopefully we can, continue to steer development towards what we see in other nations. And then that helps us actually continue, to build a city that hopefully will be a pride, of the nation. So, David, thank you so much for the time. An hour has gone by, and I know it's too early again to request, but we hope that you'll be able to come here again to share your many thoughts, your many insights, and the expertise that you have displayed so very brilliantly in this episode.
Thank you. We always want to come around. It's always interesting talking, and the public needs to know. Have information and be able to take informed. Nobody wants to see people's investments go down the drain. It's not what.
Thank you so very much. I know a lot of people will be willing to talk to or reach out to Surveyor David. His contacts will be shared below. You can reach out to him. In case you have questions, or you can even drop in the comments, and then we'll be able to pass those questions along to Surveyor David. So for now, it's been fun with this particular episode. There's so much that we've talked about. Try to listen to it again, and then if there are any issues that require clarity, kindly reach out to us. Also, you can, by the contacts that you see below in the screen, reach out to Surveyor David. It's been an exciting time. I hope to see you on the very next episode. For now, goodbye and God bless.